Edward here from erviewer.com. I have another video for you. This is an interview that I did not too long ago with Gail Husick of the Husick Group. Gail is a prominent person in the remote viewing world. I guess you could call her a second generation viewer. She was trained by the great Lynn Buchanan, a former military remote viewer, all around incredible human being, Lynn Buchanan. She is a certified, trained with him. She's also certified by David John Oates, I believe his name is, the guy who found reverse speech and is the prominent person for reverse speech around the world. She trained with him as well. And what she's done is she's married remote viewing with reverse speech. She does work for clients, with her team of professionals. She is a project manager for her own group. I get a lot of emails from people who asking me to do remote viewing for them. I don't work like that for hire. If you're looking for a team of professional remote viewers to help you with a situation, reach out to Gail and talk to her to find out if her services, if she's right for you. She will let you know. But she incorporates reverse speech with the remote viewing services when she can. And it is, in my opinion, invaluable, absolutely invaluable. Reverse speech and remote viewing, in my opinion, they are one and the same. It's so amazing. So she did, I was fortunate enough that she took the time and she went through my entire Dalai Lama video. The Dalai Lama video was a target that I did for her in her group, the training target. And she took my video, including my intro, and she went through the whole thing and found reversals in my intro and in the session itself. And I'm going to go through some of these reversals now. We talked about them in the interview, but I edited that out so that I can do this and actually play the actual reversal. And so this one is one of them right from the beginning, as I'm talking in my intro about people who are worth their salt and put the time in, and when an actual remote viewing is taking place and when one is not. And this is what the reversal is that comes through from that. Any remote viewer who is worth their salt, who practices, who does the work, will tell you that some days the magic is running through you. Some days it's not. Who has it? The woo-woo. What comes through as a reversal. The woo-woo, if for people who aren't familiar with that, that is kind of a slang word for the unexplainable or the paranormal. Cliff High uses that term a lot in his WebBot reports for these kind of unexplainable things that come through in the WebBot reports. It's not even a term that I typically use, but it's so interesting that it would come through in a reversal as I'm saying with conviction that sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Who puts in the work? Who actually puts in the work to actually achieve this process of accessing another dimension of time and space, being able to manage their mental processing mechanisms below the threshold of our awareness enough to allow for a perception to come through, enough to be recognizable. That's the process of remote viewing. That is the woo-woo. And who has it? That's what I'm saying here. And then here's another one, another reversal from the same clip that goes to the end of when it's not happening. Any remote viewer who is worth their salt, who practices, who does the work, will tell you that some days the magic is running through you. Some days it's not. It's nonse. It's nonse. It's nonse. It's nonsense. So when it's not happening, it is nonsense. And what does that mean? That means that when I'll use myself as an example. Sometimes I sit down and I'm trying and it's not working. It's just for whatever reason. And what is taking place there is that for whatever reason that input has either gotten obliterated by my mental processes, or I was just unable to obtain it or access it. And when that happens, then my mind is what is typical with people who attempt to do remote viewing, is that some nonsense is created. Our creative additions get stimulated, and then what comes out is nonsense. So it's interesting that that would come through in a reversal. And in the same line with that, when I'm saying that sometimes it ain't working, and there's nothing worse than that. I'm telling you, when I sit down and do a remote viewing session, I'm looking to access another dimension. I'm looking to access who I am below the threshold of my awareness, below the limit. And we do have a limit. We do have a threshold of awareness. I keep getting comments saying that we don't. For those people who don't think we have a threshold of awareness, all I can say is the Earth is round. But back to this. Again, these are conviction. When I sit down to do my intros for my videos, they're not scripted. They're not scripted. I sit down, turn on the camera, and I pour it out. And some of these reversals really kind of speak to that, like this one. For me, it's not about quote unquote nailing the target. It's about the experience that I'm having during that episode. A million. That's so true, because right now, I mean, this might be my 200th video. I'm a little bit behind schedule. I was hoping to have about 300 videos up by now, but I think this is number 200, and I got about 400,000 views total. But I want to have millions and millions of views, 400 million views if I can. Not to stroke my ego, but because the why I'm doing this is to capture on video a human experience, so that other human beings can watch and see another human being accessing other dimensions, other ranges of time and space, that we can actually access other dimensions of time and space. We can experience them. We can feel the emotions that are triggered by those inputs, that we can go into that. And we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more that we can do beyond the threshold of our awareness, where the rest of who we are, the rest of our capabilities, all of that stuff exists. And this is another really interesting reversal right here. The scene in Bruce Lee's movie Enter the Dragon, where he's training that young martial artist who he sees walking up the path, and he's trying to teach him how to move with emotional content, is what he's attempting to teach him. On show me the womb. On show me the womb. On show me the womb. Such an interesting one. What I'm talking about in that from that intro, that scene with Bruce Lee, he's attempting to bring that student's awareness into a different realm. He's trying to bring that student into, upgrade that student. He's trying to bring something out of him that exists within him, and he's trying to help him to bring it out. And the reversal, I want to show him meet the womb. I want to show him, because I want to show that in my videos. I want to show that experience, meet the womb. That it's so cryptic. Meet the womb. Am I saying, is that the threshold itself? Is that what's beyond the threshold? Tapping into the threshold. Is that the womb? Is our subconscious, or what's loosely termed our subconscious, is that the womb, where we go back into, as we go back into who we truly are? This is a reversal that I just have to sit and meditate on, because I'm telling myself something right there. I'm teaching myself something. I love that one. Here's some more where I'm going into how kind of what I'm doing, the conviction of why I'm doing these videos, what I'm attempting to show. I'm dealing with a person, so emotions an emotion came through, an emotion came through. I show him me. I mean, I'm talking about aesthetics right there. Aesthetics are real. An aesthetic is a real emotion. That's coming from the real element of the individual, and that's what I'm saying. I'm showing him me. I really like that one. Here's another one. I'm dealing with a person, so emotions start where come an emotion came through. An emotion came through. Show me. Show me. Show me. Show me. An aesthetic, a true emotion. Here's a couple from the session itself. Um, Anyone who's trained in remote viewing knows that we're trained that our pursuit is not to name the target. We don't want to name the target. And why is that taught? It's taught because that is a mental process to name the target, and that process will completely destroy the attempt. It'll trigger the creative elements of the mind and just ruin it uh, over and over again. So it's kind of a rule to kind of embed into the mind of the remote viewer that our job is not to name the target. Relieve ourselves of the burden of the task of naming the target so that we can allow for the perceptions, for the aesthetics to naturally come through. But I like to break the rules, though. I like to name the target. And you'll hear that here. This one is really faint. Oh, man, like a lot on there falls on. Very faint, kind of a whisper. That's from the session itself, and what you hear in the reversal is me saying you'll name. Here's another one from the same line, and again the target was the Dalai Lama. This is from the same part of the session. Oh, man, like a lot on there falls on. Zale. That's probably my favorite one right there. Because in that, as I was doing that target, I wanted to name the target. I even sent an email to Gail saying, did I name the target in an AOL? It was just something that I was interested in. I don't typically do that. I mean, I have that training to not do that. But like I say, I break the rules. I'll go ahead and pursue it in a training target. So here in the same line, I say to myself, I'll name, and then right after that, I name it as Dolly. That's what's so fascinating about reverse speech and why it's so important. Reverse speech takes a lot of time. Gail was telling me about it. It takes a lot of time to do it. As soon as I get more time, I want to do reverse speech on all of my sessions, especially some of the projects that I got coming up that are going to be more precognitive. This is it for that I'm going to do for this session. Some of the other reversals that came through during the Dalai Lama session might be precognitive. If it shows that they are, I will do another video. If it's not, I'm not going to play them. But Gail is amazing. I'm really happy and grateful that she took the time to do these reversals for me. And anybody who is seriously looking for a team of professional remote viewers to help you with a situation or something that you would want to utilize remote viewing for real, reach out to her and see if it's right for you. I'll have the link below. But that's it for this. And here is the interview that I had with the great Gail Husick. Because I get people all the time email me. They want me to work on this. They want me to do this. And I'm like, I don't do it.
Believe it or not, I've already had a couple who've contacted me because of the video you just put up showing your session on this.
Great. That's fantastic. And then hopefully,
yeah.
talk about the reverse speech too, they'll be like, "Oh my God, this is perfect. This is what I've been looking for. This kind of professional."
Yeah, it's happy to do it. One thing I would want to get in there somewhere is the type of projects that we tend to look for and that we like to work on. I turn down far more projects than I accept. We get a lot of requests. And some of them are just inappropriate, looking for people who don't want to be found, that kind of stuff. Some of them I wouldn't say are inappropriate. They just aren't a good match for what we do. We try to choose projects where there's at least a possibility of eventual feedback. Right? So if we're working with law enforcement on a missing person case, our hope is that person will be found, and if we're successful in providing information, hopefully they'll be successful in finding the person and we'll have feedback. Or if we're doing, say, a technology development project for a private client, a corporation, whatever, we may or may not get feedback, but if they continue and actually develop what it is that they had set out to do, there's at least a reasonable possibility that we'll get some feedback. We've done background research for journalists. Again, as they continue their research, as they write their story, there's a good chance we're eventually going to get feedback. I tend not to take on projects that are more sort of personal life path. What should I do with my life? Not that you can't use remote viewing for that. It's not that you can't use it for that. It's just there's never going to be feedback. We're never going to know for sure that we got the right answer. And I really, especially at the stage that remote viewing is at now, and its level of acceptance by the general public, I really want to stick with projects where if we do a good job, if we do it right, there's actually going to be some confirmation at some point.
I think that, with people who maybe are not familiar with remote viewing, they're hearing about it, they're seeing the videos or listening to the interviews, and they're saying, man, I'd really like to have some remote viewers help me with this issue. They don't really take those things into consideration. Like you're saying, when you're considering a client, you're looking at, will my viewers get feedback, because that's important for us, and that's going to be a major consideration of whether or not we'll even consider working with you. I think that's something that people don't consider, and they really need to have that in mind, that the viewer feedback.
That's right, and different viewers and different groups, have different opinions and agendas, and I'm not saying other people are wrong if they do it a different way, but just for our group, that's very important to me, that we're working on things where there's a good chance that there will be. It's okay if we have to wait for the feedback. I mean, that's part of operational work. It's not like a practice target where you just tear open the envelope at the end of the session and have that instant gratification. You may have to wait 2 years before they find the missing person. But at least, there is a person there somewhere. If that problem is solved, there will eventually be feedback. So that's just a criteria I have for the work that we do.
And so if a client reaches out, they have something that they're looking for, and you decide, okay, this is what we do. We'll take it on. Is the reverse speech end of it something automatically in there, or is it an option for the client? When do you automatically include that, or how do you add that into a client's?
Right, it's an option for the client, and so depending on whether it's a paying client or a pro bono client, depending on the resources available, we'll talk about how we would work that into the project. Again, as I mentioned before, it's very powerful, but it's hugely time consuming, and it does require someone who's had a lot of training and experience to make sure that you're getting genuine reversals. So I would say on the majority of our remote viewing projects, we don't use it. But on ones that are very high stakes, or where there are the resources to really dig in, it's available. And also it depends on which viewers I'm working with. Some viewers are very comfortable recording their sessions, as you are, And so that material is there, and we can always go back to it and look for the reversals. Other viewers aren't very comfortable recording their sessions. And, I firmly believe the viewer is in charge of the session, and their number one job is to do great remote viewing. And so if having a recorder on is going to make them uncomfortable and self-conscious and kind of mess with their remote viewing session, then we're just not going to get reversals from that particular viewer. But I think, over time, I'm seeing more viewers who are getting comfortable recording their sessions. And not only does that help by preserving all this material that you can then go look at or listen to for reversals, also it's getting the physical body more involved in the session. Your vocal cords are going, and I think it just helps with target contact in general to do your session out loud.
As do I. I think that it's great what you're doing. People who maybe be looking for some remote viewers, maybe reach out to you. They'll want to know what is your how long have you been doing remote viewing? What is your training? Kind of about you.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So actually, I'll back up even more before the remote viewing. My professional background was in law. I went to Harvard Law School. I practiced corporate law in Silicon Valley for about 10 years. So when I retired from that, I had no idea, what was coming next, and didn't really imagine that I would be using that skill set again. But it turns out that all of that comes over very nicely in terms of project management. So when we take on a project from a client, I'm not doing the viewing, although I am trained through the advanced level. I did my training with Lynn Buchanan. I am a viewer. I continue to view, but I don't view on the same project that I'm managing for several reasons. Probably the main one is I don't want to have bias when I go to analyze the sessions of the other viewers who are working on a target. So, but anyway, that was my professional background. I'm also a licensed private investigator, which seems to be important to law enforcement. The relationship I have with law enforcement when we're working on things like a missing person case, they seem to be more comfortable, compared to, prior to the time I had that license. They weren't quite sure what box to put me in. A remote viewer, okay, this could be valuable information, but I don't know who this person is. And somehow having the private investigator license does make them more comfortable. They understand where I'm coming from. I understand a little more where they're coming from. So that's good. So that's my non-remote viewing background. For remote viewing, I started CRV training in 2010, so I've been doing it for about 8 years. I have done most of my training with Lynn Buchanan. Can continue to train with Lynn. He's my mentor, and I don't think you're ever really done training in remote viewing. It's a lifetime. Pardon?
It's a lifestyle.
Sorry. Indeed. So at the Husick Group, we now have about 24 professional remote viewers, almost all of them trained through the advanced level in CRV, controlled remote viewing. Many of them Lynn's students, but also some of Paul Smith's students, students of some of Lynn's students, Lori Williams and Paul O'Connor. There's some others. But the important thing is they're working in structure, remote viewing as opposed to, a more free form. Not that the free form won't get you good information sometimes, but the discipline of CRV and working in structure, is very important, and, gives me a level of confidence when I go to the client to deliver information. So the way we typically work, I'll talk to a potential client about what it is that they need help with. And we'll talk about whether or not remote viewing and reverse speech are appropriate tools for that. Talk about expectations, what kind of information they're likely to get, if we can help them with that. And then we will put a team together, and I'll select the viewers based on what it is that the client needs and what the viewer's strengths are. So, probably not surprising to you, some viewers are just really good at describing people. They're just, you give them a person target and they are just in there, and they can give you the physical description, and they can tell you, what's going on with that person internally, what their plans and intentions are, all kinds of stuff. There are other viewers who are really great at objects, man-made objects. They can draw a device, and I've had people sketch something, and then later the feedback will get, it'll match an illustration in a patent application. Really detailed, good stuff. Other people are very good at describing locations and sketching locations, or events, or so depending on what it is the client needs help with, I'll put together a team of viewers whose strengths match what it is the client needs to know. And then typically we'll go through several rounds of tasking. And the viewers are working blind, in good remote viewing protocol. And then as information comes back, I can work with the client on, here's a new avenue, maybe we should go explore this. So there's an iterative process that goes on there. And then I put together a formal report for the client that collects this information from the viewer. The viewers are working in structure. And if the client is not trained in remote viewing, I'm not going to just hand them a P4 matrix and some P6 tool pages and say, there you go, there's your answer. I'll put that in a report that's in English. But I'm very careful not to change what the viewers have said. It's not my job to second guess the viewers or modify. I'm just organizing it in one place that makes it easy for the client to understand. To pursue the information. We may get, and then putting the report together for the client. And then, this was all a long-winded answer, I think, to your initial question about our process and how reverse speech plays into all this. If reverse speech is going to be an element of the project, then I basically do what I've done here with your reversals. I'll listen through the session from the viewer, I'll document what I find, and then I'll go over it with the client. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about the things we've talked about today. The caveats in making sure it's a genuine reversal, how to interpret them. Making sure the client understands what this means. So if people are interested in some more information about using reverse speech together with remote viewing, I would recommend that they check out issue 10 of 8 Martinis. That's from November 2013. There's an article in here that I wrote called Remote Viewing and Reverse Speech, a Powerful Combination. And it talks about, gives a little bit of background about what reverse speech is, how it's used with remote viewing, goes through some examples of cases where it provided some useful information, and also talks about how you can use it as a remote viewing analyst. If you hear the reversals will often tell you whether the viewer is on target or not on target, because the subconscious mind knows if you're castle building, it knows if you're AOLing. And so you may have a viewer who's just going to town in their session describing something, and the reversals you'll hear from that segment of the session will be things like, this is silly.
Or this is nonsense.
Or this, yeah, in fact, there's some here in the article. Yeah, I loused this up. Boy, you're confused. That's fake. That's false image. So, as an analyst, it's interesting because when you hear the military guys who were in the Fort Meade unit talk about remote viewing, they usually worked with a monitor.
Yeah.
Who was physically present while they were doing the session, and who was trained to watch their micro expressions and their micro movements, and the monitor could often tell whether or not they were on target, and so would know, and could make a note, hey, this part of the session, they really seemed on. I'd rely on the information from here. But this other part, man, I don't think they were on target. Take this with a huge grain of salt. In the civilian world, most people are working alone. Most people are working at home, fitting this in at night or on weekends or early in the morning, with other jobs, and we're physically dispersed. We come together on Skype or Zoom or email or whatever. And so for an analyst, as I mentioned, I've got 24 viewers in the Husick group who are all around the world, which is great. I'm not constrained by geography. I can work with people wherever they are. I can work with the best people. And there's some advantages to having people spread around different time zones. If we get called with an emergency, there's somebody up somewhere. We can work on stuff around the clock. So that's all good. But the disadvantage is I'm not physically in the room with them. Most of them don't have a monitor who's physically in the room with them. And so you're missing all of this stuff that you would otherwise get with a monitor who could read the body language and read the facial expressions. Reverse speech can kind of fill that gap. If they send me the audio and I'm listening and I get to a segment where I start hearing all this stuff about this is silly, this is a false image, boy, you're confused. As an analyst, I'm like, okay, let's take that section with a grain of salt. The imagination may have hijacked the session at this point. Sorry?
Like having your own internal monitor going.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. If somebody wants to reach out to you, they have questions, how do they get over?
Sure. Our website, husickgroup.com, HUSICK, and our contact information is on there. Also, it's info@husickgroup.com.
Gail, it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I think you're one of the giants in remote viewing.
Thank you.
Incredible professionalism. Your spot on the Rob Lowe show was fantastic. You and Paul Smith was awesome. Very professional. And your work with reverse speech is absolutely mind-blowing. I think it's just an absolute benefit for anyone who's looking for professional remote viewing work should absolutely reach out to you to get the highest quality and the most for what they're looking for. And so it's great to have to be working with you. Great to know you, and really want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, it's a privilege for me to get to work with the viewers. It's just an incredible group of people. And as you know, the amount of dedication and practice that it takes to develop this skill is pretty extraordinary. And there's some really special people out there who maybe aren't as public, maybe aren't as comfortable in front of a camera. But it's an exceptional community, and I feel really privileged to be able to be a part of it.
Great. Thanks so much, Gail. I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop recording.